we had a picture perfect life, and it was smashed, and we just had pieces, shards of a life. And at some point, you realize it's possible, if you can be really creative, that it's not the same picture, it's not the same life, but you can rearrange those fragments.
It was one of the most puzzling missing persons cases that Virginia has ever seen. In October of 2009, a Virginia Tech student named Morgan Harrington traveled to Charlottesville for a concert. She got separated from her friends and vanished without a trace. 3 months later, Morgan's body was found on a remote part of a nearby farm, but it would take years for her killer to be caught. In the wake of what happened to their daughter, Dan and Gil Harrington have fought to protect others from suffering the same fate. Today, 17 years since I first sat down with them, they join us on Untold. Welcome to Untold, Dan and Gil Harrington. It's been a long time since I've seen you guys in person.
Yes.
It's just to give my audience the background. I was a reporter here at WTVR many years ago, and 17 years ago, I was covering Morgan Harrington's story, and it was at the very beginning of the story. We really didn't have much information. We knew she was missing. We knew that she had attended a concert in Charlottesville and that something tragic had occurred, but really at that point, there were no leads. There were really no suspects. And I came to your Roanoke home where you're sitting right now, and I had a very long conversation with you both, sort of about where you were at that point in time. And I remember it quite well. Whenever I talk to parents who are feeling desperate and hopeless, it tends to sort of burn a memory in your brain. And I remember feeling your pain then. I'd love to know how you're doing now. It's been 17 years. A lot of time has passed by. And Jill, you were just saying a minute ago, sometimes it feels like it's been a long time, and sometimes it feels like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are doing really well. Time is a healer and has helped. Also, the work that we have done to create legacy for Morgan has done a lot to make us feel like her life was not poured like water into the sand. I think that's really important for parents of murdered children, that their kid mattered, and all the potential that was stolen can be realized by the parents. It's not hubris. It's just to not let their kid's life be wasted. I'm also proud that we are doing well. I think at the beginning, we knew there would be sequela from Morgan's murder. We both think our lifespans will be foreshortened because of the stress of that loss. But despite that, and because we have been determined not to devolve into hatred, we have navigated and established a great deal of wholeness. And I'm so glad that we were able to do that. It ain't an easy journey.
Yeah, I remember, when she was missing, the agony that you both were experiencing at that point in time. And I didn't get to see the story through because I had moved markets. Like most news reporters do, I was a gypsy on my news journey, and I was moving on to Atlanta. But I continued to follow the story, of course. And later, when her killer was realized and brought to justice, there were several more chapters of the story that I didn't get to be a part of with you. But I wonder if the agony of not knowing is worse or better than knowing. I mean, once you knew what had happened, and is there a resolution that comes with that? Is there any peace at all, or is it just as bad?
The initial shock of Morgan missing was just overwhelming and horrible. And you think during the period of time she was missing for 101 days, and it was such a relief that someone found her, because we know from previous interactions with parents whose kids or loved ones have never been found, how difficult that is. And I think we both agree that the period of 101 days was worse than knowing that she was dead. Mm. And it was a relief that we found her body, that there is a resolution that you have. For many of these families, there's never the ability to have a resolution. It's still a what if.
It's such a dichotomy to simultaneously brace for the news that your child is dead, and at the same time you don't want to quit on your kid, so you're also trying to say, well, maybe she is alive somewhere. And to try and swing on the pendulum between bracing for incoming and trying to keep hope alive, it is excruciating. I think it's also a primitive, perhaps a visceral thing to get the body back. There are rituals for death. There's no rituals for the missing. There's no Hallmark cards for the missing. People don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. We didn't know what to say and do, but we knew we were feeling such extremes. We all agree that was the hardest part of our journey, was missing.
Catie, it was also people like yourself that helped us so much during that period of time of 101 days. And we even say today, thank God there was not a massive earthquake or a huge international or national disaster, because for at least the 6 weeks after Morgan was missing, and longer than that, we sometimes had 2 to 3 interviews a day.
I remember that.
And so those things really helped us know that we were doing something to help find Morgan. And even though we couldn't go out and necessarily search and do those things, it was so important for us to have the public awareness. And that's one of the things that Jill and I both see so much when there's something on TV of a missing person. The families oftentimes just don't know how to pull it together. They are they're at a loss to know what to do. And somehow Jill and I, we were able to kind of engage these services from all across the country, actually, and that was very helpful for us. It didn't ease the pain, but we were able to think that we were doing something to find more good.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jill.
We were peculiarly skilled in doing this very thing because we're both in healthcare. We're used to, when there's a disaster, a very sick patient, you put your emotions on hold and do the task at hand. And you can cordon off those feelings and forge ahead. And we were able to do that in the face of our daughters missing.
I will attest to it. I was there for a very good portion of that 101 days. And I think, as you rightly stated, Dan, you guys really didn't sleep much. I mean, you were on television, you were hanging flyers, you were having press conferences, you really were so active, and that compartmentalization that you're describing, Jill, of like being able to say, okay, we're so broken right now, but we have to be focused on this mission, and we can't deal with the broken parts until we really have time to deal with it. And it's funny that you should say, Dan, when you hear other parents who talk about missing children. I have recently become engaged with the Amy Bradley story, which I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's been a really popular Netflix docuseries about a girl who went on a cruise with her family in 1998 and there's large suspicions that she was human trafficked off of the cruise ship. Nothing to confirm that, but certainly a lot of theories and a lot of sightings in years that have happened since. And her family is from Virginia. They're from Chesterfield County. I've had her brother on twice. I've spoken to several other people connected to the case. And, her brother and her mother and her father, I mean, they live in that mode, your 101 day mode. They have lived that for 18, 19 years, 20 years. I can't remember exactly how many years it's been. Maybe it's more than that. They really do cling to hope, and they feel like this documentary has given them a stage to spotlight this case, and it certainly has gotten them a lot of attention. But you have to feel for them in this scenario that, this is decades, that sense of agony and panic and not knowing continues, and it's a parent's worst nightmare. It's just so hard to do what you guys did, which not everybody can do, is to sort of just put it all on a shelf and focus on looking forward.
We worked hard at it.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder when you see parents in that position, I don't know if there's any advice you could give. I don't know if there's any guidance on how to deal with that.
I think we do definitely feel for them. We don't know their pain experience, but we remember ours, and still, have some. Of course, things blindside you sometimes. I think we are very fortunate also that early on we determined that we would not let ourselves devolve into anger and hatred, because in so doing you become kind of like the evil that you're fighting against. Mm-hmm. And you let it permeate you and change you. And I do think that we were able to, with that in mind, we're able to maintain a certain level of strength and resilience, and not bitterness. I don't hate Jesse Matthew. I never did. But I wanted him stopped. Yeah. I wanted him never to hurt another girl.
Do you think you've done so much in terms of awareness and safety and stopping the next girl, right? Do you think that you see less of these cases, or do you think the threat is still as big as it was?
I think it's as big as it was. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, definitely.
At the time, it seemed as if there were actually several missing people around Charlottesville, and of course, when it happens to you, it's kind of like I've heard people say, you see something out there, when you're pregnant, it seems like everybody's pregnant,
Right.
But through the years, we have had we wouldn't say a huge amount of calls, but we have had an occasional call from a family with how did you do it? What are the recommendations that you have that maybe would help us? And for us, one of the two of the things that we've done that I think really helped us so much was Jill starting Help Save the Next Girl. And that was clearly in response to comments in Charlottesville by the police in terms of the safety of Charlottesville. And then the day that Morgan's body was found, I was one of the faculty at the new medical school for Virginia Tech, and we started the Morgan Day Harrington Scholarship Fund, which helps students basically with things, in terms of their costs. That Morgan was going to be an educator. She was not going to be a doctor, but she did work at the medical school the summer before she went missing. And so that was a life-changing event for her. And so that's the reason that I did the scholarship, not because she was going to be a doctor, but that it was regarding her interest in education.
Yeah, I want to get into more of those efforts and the upcoming fundraisers and some other things in our next few segments. So we're going to take a break right now, and we'll be right back.
If you're enjoying Untold, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also rate and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, I am back with the Harringtons, and as we discussed, they are in a space I once visited 17 years ago for an interview with them. I want to ask you guys, when you think about where you were in the grieving process at that moment, you really hadn't even started grieving. You were still in a hoping process. To today, if you had to sort of characterize where you were then and where you are now, what is the biggest feeling that you would express that has changed? What is the feeling that is so different between then and now?
I think immediately after Morgan, well, for the 101 days that she was missing, it's indescribable how upset you are. I mean, your whole life has been turned upside down, and you're trying to make heads or tails of trying to go back to work or have some sense of normality. And we talk about this to other people, but I'm doing it to say, I cried, daily, and lost like 20 pounds. I couldn't eat. Jill, I think, cried once. And so I'm thinking, what in the heck is going on with Jill? And Jill's thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on with him? He's losing it. And so what we try to, I think, pull together now is that people grieve individually, and there's no timeline, there's no script for it. Everybody has a different way of doing it. But at the same time, and I think that's what has helped us, we also have to grieve as a couple. So individually we had to do our thing, but we had to also at some point know that as a couple we had to get through this, and how are we going to depend upon each other. And it wasn't Joe being callous and me being weak. These were just individual traits of what we had, different
grief styles.
And even today, gosh, we were watching something last night. I mean, Jill will tell you, almost every night when we're watching some TV show, I'm tearful. I'm not boo-hooing, but I'm wiping my eyes.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that's my way of remembering Morgan in so many ways, particularly music. Really, sort of triggers me.
Yeah. I mean, it seems the grief is ongoing. It does not really stop.
I say you don't get over it, but you can get past it. And part of that getting past is you have to relinquish the life that you had, because that life is gone. And in our humanness, you cling to it. I want what I had, but it can never be. We had a picture perfect life, and it was smashed, and we just had pieces, shards of a life. And at some point you realize it's possible, if you can be really creative, that it's not the same picture, it's not the same life, but you can rearrange those fragments. Maybe it's an abstract mosaic now. It's different. It's not the pretty house on the hill picture, but it still is capable of beauty and sustenance. So you have to be open. Blessings have continued to rain down in equal measure as the blessings we had with our daughter. But often in our humanness, you just dump out the blessings that are trying to arrive because you want what you had.
Yeah, I can see a different piece in you guys. From my perspective, now and seeing you throughout all of those periods of time. Like I said, I wasn't able to interview you at the conclusion of the case and at the sentencing of Jesse Matthews. I wasn't there for that, but I certainly watched all of it. It does seem that a certain weight or a certain disruption in your energy has gone away. It seems there is more peace. I don't know if that's just my perception or if that's the truth, but I wonder if having that resolution and having a justice, having not just finding out but also accountability, if that has kind of restored some normalcy for you guys.
Justice is such an abstraction. There are no winners here.
Mm-hmm.
His family lost him as much as we lost Morgan. But I am very happy that he can never hurt anybody again. That is paramount, to spare other families the anguish that we have experienced. To stop a killer. That brings a lot of gratification to me. Again, don't hate him. Don't want to rip him shred to shred, but I definitely wanted him stopped.
Mm. How often do you two get back to Charlottesville? I know that there's often fundraisers and events and things. I don't know how often you go, and what's that like?
We don't go as often as we used to, but it's not far away. My brother lives in Charlottesville. We go on definitely to put more flowers on the bridge and prayer flags for Morgan's birthday, for the anniversary of when she was abducted, for the anniversary in 2 weeks. It'll be when her body was found.
Mm-hmm.
So I want people in that town to know that somebody still cares. It's still front and center in our lives. And the installation on the bridge is kind of a manifestation that, again, somebody cares. Still. As long as we can, we'll keep that up.
Do you feel more connected to her there, or is it more sort of triggering to be there?
For me, I would say it's not triggering, perhaps connection, but it's more memorializing her.
Mm. Well, I know there's a fundraiser coming up, and I think, Dan, you were touching on that before. Tell us a little bit about what's going to happen there.
Yeah, this is the upcoming Docs for Morgan, and that was started by a friend of ours 15 years ago, and it's a fundraiser, not necessarily a huge amount of money made, but it has it's a great basketball game between the medical students at Virginia Tech Carolian School of Medicine and the doctors and residents at Carolian Clinic. And they play rough. And we have thank goodness we occasionally have an orthopedist, on service. But it really, Jill says it so well. We have actually cheerleaders from 2 high schools that come. Mm-hmm. We have a band from a 3rd high school that comes, and there are probably 300 to 400 people, wouldn't you say, Jill? It's a very good time. So it's a fun thing.
It is a celebration.
We are given time, at halftime to, sort of give a spiel, and the medical students, of course, at this point in time, don't know Morgan, except the medical school actually has a wall that's Morgan Dana Harrington artwork and that sort of thing. So, but new medical students don't have that kind of touch base, except for one. And for one of those students, we're doing the tuition, and that makes a difference. We've raised about $600,000, from various sources, and if you make $7,000 or $8,000 from it, we feel lucky, but we feel much better that people just come. They don't have to get anything. There's no, we're not charging admission. We just.
It is great fun. I mean, it really is a joy-filled celebration. Remarkable that 16 years after our daughter was killed, this community continues to lavish love and compassion and support for us. I mean, it hasn't ended.
Yeah.
I still have people stopping me in the grocery store. We pray for your daughter. How are you all doing? I mean, it's Americana at its best. In these times, people are seeking connection and belonging. And boy, do we have it here with this community. We are so grateful.
That is so nice. That is so nice to hear. And I, as a news reporter, some people used to, say to me all the time, how do you cover all of these tragedies and not become jaded that the world is a bad place? And I always said, oh, tragedy brings out the best in people. It's in a hurricane that you find these neighbors, packing each other into their houses 15 at a time and coming up with ways to, stay warm and fed. And I don't know, just the most basic tenets of humanity seem to rise out of those tragedies too, and in the nicest ways. So I'm glad to hear that's been your experience in the wake of yours. And I know that, the Roanoke community is not huge. It's a smaller community. And I'm so glad that has been comforting for you guys. This is another great spot to take a break. I want to sort of get into, like I said, we've covered a number of stories with other families who've had missing children or tragedy, and just get your thoughts on how they can get through it. We're going to talk about that on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
If you're enjoying Untold, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also rate and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, we had been talking about, various cases that have similar scenarios where parents don't get a resolution. And specifically, the Amy Bradley case, of course, is the top of mind because I've been doing a lot of interviews on that story and feel quite connected to it. And I myself, I'm rooting for them. Like I feel like I want to be hopeful that there's some possibility that she's out there and, maybe doesn't have access to communications or, but it is, it is a hard road. They admit that having this hope is sort of, in a way, uplifting, that like they feel like they can still hope that maybe the worst hasn't occurred. But it is such a journey and a struggle. And I wonder how often do you guys kind of speak on that process? Do you, is it mainly when someone reaches out to you that information becomes useful?
It's hard to sort out because every case and situation is different, and people's responses are different. Being on the yo-yo of missing, I mean, we started, we actually lobbied the Virginia General Assembly and established, I think it's April 19th, Virginia Missing Persons Day, to give some stage for family members to come, and we would have a big gathering at the Roanoke Police Academy, and there would be agents there to take in case-specific information and talk to the families if they had any questions. They also could submit familial DNA into the data banks at no cost. So if remains were found nationally, that the family could be identified and notified. And just giving a forum for those people who, that there's no recognition because they live in limbo. I think was a very important thing to do.
The technology too, the DNA testing and the database has become such a valuable tool for investigators. And it was the tool in this case that was able to give you guys that resolution. And I don't want to say closure. It's not necessarily ever closed, but understanding of what had happened. And I wonder, I do think that we're solving more, but as you stated, there are certainly a lot of missing person cases that don't get solved as well. So it is a step forward, I think, that technology, and it does seem that more and more it's being used in these cases.
It's surprising because we think that it's been around always, but even when Morgan was missing, Dan lobbied the Virginia State General Assembly to have them accept the use of familial DNA forensically. Up until that point, Colorado was the only state that could use that in evidence. I mean, that was not so long ago.
It wasn't that long ago, no. And I remember thinking to myself on several of these cases, gosh, it would be great if there was some kind of database, and there wasn't at the time. It wasn't. It's not really a database until you have a lot of samples to compare, right? And now, and I think the ancestral online databases sort of helped that along too, So, that's a blessing for a lot of parents, I'm sure, out there that are hoping one day there might be a match. But I am glad to see both of you doing well. I'm glad to see that you're both still active in remembering Morgan and getting her name out there. It is, incredible to kind of revisit this with you at 17 years later. And I'm happy to find you both peaceful and fulfilled. I think, like I said, there's a different weight today than the first time, but still I can,
you all, you and all the media people have really contributed to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was imperative for us to solicit information to bring resolution to Morgan's case, but also something that has resulted from, just the barrage of media that we participated with. And we were very transparent because we needed you all. But that process, I think, also has served to remove some of the stigma that surround these cases. I think it is a self-soothing, magical thinking that people get that, pretty girl, too bad. But, she probably was a bad girl and in another place that's not a nice town. And I think people now realize that crimes happen to nice girls in lovely places.
Right.
And I think that it is changing the culture that surrounds these crimes. And that has been an unexpected benefit.
I too agree with that. I think the conversation always starts with, well, was she drinking, or what was going on, and
what was she wearing?
Right. And this case has certainly proved that theory or that conversation to be a wrong path to go down. I really remember the amount of coverage at the time and for years after. And I think a lot of people really have related to you and learned from you. And I do think your efforts have had a tremendous impact. So thank you again for giving us an update and sharing your story. And I hope the basketball game is a blast and nobody, gets a broken nose or, femur. And, I hope that all of your efforts continue. I know you guys seem to be doing great, and it's good to see you.
Lovely to see you too, Kate. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Untold is a production of WTVR CBS 6, executive produced by Mike Bergazzi and Catie Beck, directed by Nick Maharaj and Brock Taylor, and edited by April Harshman. Follow the show on Instagram at Untold_WTVR.